I'm calling it black vein blues. It makes sense if you think about it. About a month ago it started, slow and quiet. I had just come home from school to find my father prodding at the corpse of a gator that washed up on the bank a couple of paces from our home. At the time I had been furious, thinking his redneck ass had killed it even in spite of the numerous charges he'd get slapped with for killing a protected species. Only when I approached did I realize just how bad it was. The thing was bloated and pale, with ink-black webbing sprouting just under the skin. My father had been prodding it with the tail end of a fire poker so the belly of it had opened and spilled onto the ground, its guts a grease-black spill on the deadened grass. I remember retching at the sight and smell, turning away and cursing out loud for my father to get the fuck away from it. He hadn't been too happy to hear his own spawn yelling at him like he was a simple fool, so I ended up being charged with cleaning the thing off our property. But only after he skinned it to sell the leather once he finished it up. He never got to sell it. He didn't last that long. Later that evening, after a long shower, I had gone up to the store to buy some things for dinner. Nothing big or costly, so it only took me a half hour to get the shit and hike back. I remember the store had been eerily silent, all of the other customers lost in some sort of daze. Some didn't even notice when I knocked directly into them, their glassy eyes flying to be and back to whatever they were focused. I wrote it up for being a sign of the times, what with the pre-existing illness racking the land long before this one ever touched the lands. The cashier had been just about the only person with half their wits, but only enough to warn me to look out for sick people on my way back to the house. Little did I know I would find out just what she meant the moment I entered my driveway. There my father was, stood in the center of the road, completely nude and coated in inky black blood. It was like something out of a horror movie. His eyes had reflected in the shine of the headlights, already dead focused. "Dad, what the fuck is wrong with you?" I had asked, throwing open the car door and stepping. Something stopped me then. Self-preservation probably. An instinct buried within my mind that warned not to go near the man drooling ropes of blood and mucus. It was a good thing too, because when he let out that animal shriek and lunged for me, I had enough time to get right back into the car and slam the door behind me before he hit the metal behind me. He was so maddened that he slammed his face over and over into the window not 5 inches from my face, blurring the glass with the blackened blood. I was so petrified I didn't even think for a minute, just staring at the thing that had once been my father as gored itself against the windows of our old truck. My call to the cops had been frantic, and I almost thought they might not believe me until the operator let me know someone would be coming up to check the property in the next couple of minutes. I wanted to scream at them to hurry, but I simply shut my eyes and prayed the windows held up. Then, as if it knew what I had done, it just stopped. I could see its white milky eyes through the haze on my window, watching me intently. It was the closest I've ever been able to observe one of them. I saw what the disease did to their body, bleeding through their skin and veins until it looked like they were coated with blackened cobwebs. They no longer had pupils or eye color really, replaced by bluish milk-white circles that shot from side to side as their blind gazes sought out who knows what in the dark. He was so still and calm that for a second I had thought he might have come to. But then its broken jaw opened wide enough to hit its chest and it let out a shriek that pierced the night and shook the entire car before it turned and sped into the wild. I hadn't seen him since. Not in the trees, not in the town. It was as if he had disappeared off the face of the earth. The cops had arrived an hour later, but he was already gone, and so they left with a shake of their head, muttering about crazed teenagers. I wonder if they knew what they were going to be walking right back into when they went home later that night. My father hadn't been the only one affected, leading me to believe that it wasn't the gator that turned him mad. In 24 hours the town had gone from normal to complete chaos. The disease had taken over, turning a good portion of our population into drooling monsters. It attacks your mind first is what I think happens. Your brain overheats, scrambling like eggs in a hot skillet and leaving behind something mindless and violent. Not quite like turning into a zombie, but close enough to where some of the townsfolk went by those old rules. Any bites and you get a bullet to the head. I witnessed that myself on day 3, just when I had been brave enough to venture out into the silence. Needless to say, I stopped traveling out in the open after that. From what little I could gather, the town went completely nuts. The sane people turned right into something out of an atypical apocalypse novel where the people went right into savage mode in order to keep order. Law enforcement had been quick to interfere, but only enough to establish themselves as kings of the castle and wall off any resources the rest of the townsfolk may need. From what I heard from the one actually sane person I met, they had put away some of the people affected with black vein in the jail cells to experiment with. I shuddered at the thought of what that might mean. Still, that wasn't the worst of it. You know that phrase, the one popularized by modern movies and media. What if humans were the real bad guy? God, they were so wrong. Nothing could compare to what those things were doing. You see, the difference between them and zombies is that they still are entirely human, or at least think like them. Even as they turn into slobbering, rage-infested creatures, they still have the presence of mind to hunt. I'm lucky enough to have witnessed it before I got caught in one of their traps. In the middle of the night one day, I had decided to use the darkness in order to head into town to grab whatever supplies I could loot from unguarded businesses. Just as I had reached town, I saw them gathered in the middle of a road, looking up at something strung to a street light. They were people, caught in one of those hunters' nets meant to trap large game. Their wails of terror had filled the night as the three of them had been slowly lowered to the ground and promptly ripped to shreds at the hands of those monsters. They had taken their time, seeming to bask in the horror and degradation as they killed them one by one. I couldn't look away, something within me refused to believe it was even real. I had seen terrible shit happen on TV before, but watching your neighbors laugh and shout in delight as they remove the organs of people you once shopped side by side with was a whole new ball game. It didn't stop there though. The evidence of their rampages were more and more apparent as you snuck down the streets. There were stores that had been burned to the ground, others splattered with blood and gore. There were clear stains on the street where you could see victims had tried to flee before being dragged into whatever hell was awaiting them. I didn't even make it to the store before I turned and ran all the way back to my house. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw that day. Nothing could erase the memory of the horrific things I had witnessed, or the shit I would continue to see every time I gathered the courage to leave my home. I'm stuck, utterly stuck in my decaying cabin. I can't trust the water anymore because I'm almost 100% sure where it came from. It would be the only explanation for the gator washing up with the disease a day before it affected our first townsfolk. I have enough food to last for a while, but it's not food I'm worried about. It's the water. Even with my stockpile, I'll only last the next month or so. I know what some of you are going to say. Get the fuck out of there, take your truck and speed right out of town limits before you're claimed to. It's too late for that. I saw the trucks arrive not hours ago, the barriers set up in record time. Anyone brave enough to go near them gets snatched up by the men in yellow or shot right in between the eyes. I know well enough about our government to know those who got taken won't end up well and safe on the other side. I beg of you, if you have any information I could use to help myself out in this situation, please tell me. I'm running out of options here, and I don't know how far this has gone.